that entirely wrong.
A gentleman's time has expired.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Congressman Bill Bray from California.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman was rightfully saying the concerns of transparency and how far we can go with that. It just sort of reminded me of the fact that if you had a proposal for major bonuses for your executives, a proposal that had billions of dollars out there, would you ever propose to present them with that argument at midnight and then expect them to vote on the commitment by noon the next day?
No, I think my approach generally is to provide people the information they need in order to make an informed judgment.
Would you think that the 12 hours for a 1,000-page proposal would be appropriate time for consideration?
Well, as I said, I want to work with the Congress. I want to work with what you've asked for. I just want to make sure that I protect the interests of the American taxpayer at the back end of this process.
Okay, I just pointed out, frankly, is that the representatives of the taxpayers, we were actually asked by our Chief Administrative Officer of Congress to ask us to vote to make that kind of commitment within that short a period of time, where I don't think any executive for any company would ask their board of directors to do that, but we were asked to do that, and that's when all hell broke loose, when they realized there was a whole lot in that proposal that wasn't there.
I understand.
This issue of hyperinflation coming down the pike is something we haven't talked about. And I just want to sort of get reassured that with all the hyper spending that we're seeing the federal government do in the last few months, and the projections we're going to continue to do it, most economists feel there's a great threat that we'll go into hyperinflation. If hyperinflation kicks in, what is the results on our payback? Now, I assume that we will not be going dollar for dollar. It'll be value to some degree, but will it be dollar to dollar? And will hyperinflation then reduce the net value of what we're paid back to the Treasury?
It's a great question. It's a very difficult one to answer because hyperinflation would be accompanied by a lot of other factors. So you'd have to kind of go through a string of events. What would hyperinflation unleash? You know, if you own real assets, fixed assets in a hyperinflationary period, that can be a good thing because the value of those goes up, but there's nobody around that has any money in order to buy it. So you'd really have to step back and look at it. You know, our plan takes anywhere from 3 to 5 years to fully unfold, given current market conditions. How quickly a hyperinflation scenario, if it were to occur, how quickly it would occur, don't know. So we could be well down the path towards realizing the repayment of the American taxpayer before any hyperinflationary situation were to occur.
So in other words, you're hoping to be able to pay back the taxpayers before the ceiling falls in on the inflationary spiral?
Well, I'd like to make some major inroads into repaying the American taxpayer, and I'm not so sure the ceiling falls in. As I said, hyperinflation will be one element. There could be a host of other things that some offsetting that come with that.
Okay, here's the follow-up question here, is how long do you anticipate AIG to take to pay off the debt to the taxpayers?
Well, I think it'll take somewhere between 3 and 5 years, and what makes the answer so difficult is in formulating a response, you have to make a judgment about how strong will the economy be worldwide and how good will the capital markets be worldwide. If they stay about where they are or get better, it's that 3 to 5 year time frame. If they were to get worse, it could get elongated.
Has the administration given any guidelines on when to start repaying AIG's debt?
They have not given us any guidelines. We work with the Federal Reserve. Anytime we use any of the dollars that have been allocated to us, we have to get a waiver from the Federal Reserve. It's our intent to try to start repaying that as quickly as possible. As I mentioned in my oral testimony, we want to take some of our largest assets, put them in a special purpose vehicle. When we do that, the amount of debt that we've borrowed from the Federal Reserve will be reduced proportionately. So we could do that in a matter of months, assuming we can get all of the regulatory approvals for these special purpose vehicles done in that time frame.
To what extent has the Federal Reserve officials been involved in the strategy of how to pay back this?
They've been very involved in it. As I said, we don't, I treat them as a full partner. We don't do anything without getting them involved.
So they're involved in day-to-day decisions involved here, or is it just general policy?
No, I wouldn't say day-to-day decisions. I would say more strategy and policy. Sometimes it's hard to tell when you move from strategy to a policy to a decision, but we don't want them to be caught off guard by anything that we're working on.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you very much. Gentleman's time has expired. Congressman Cummings from Maryland.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Liddy, good morning.